Homeless boy teaches millionaire's daughter to ride a bike. Her father sees it, and it changes his life. Richard Anderson pressed firmly on the accelerator while talking on the phone about yet another million-dollar deal. His daughter Emily, just 2 years old, cried in the back seat because she couldn't pedal the pink bike she'd gotten for her birthday. The nanny Nancy tried to comfort her, but nothing worked. That's when a homeless boy approached little Emily in the Central Park of Sacramento. The boy, who couldn't have been more than 10, wore simple, worn-out clothes and a brown cap to shield himself from the harsh sun. Richard was about to get into the car when he heard the boy's gentle voice speaking to his daughter. "Hi, Princess. Why are you crying?" the boy asked, kneeling beside the bike. Emily stopped crying immediately and looked into those kind eyes. Nancy, the nanny, tensed up and tried to pull the girl away. "Come on, Emily, let's go," Nancy said, suspicious. But Emily shook her head and pointed at the boy. "He's gonna help me ride," she said with the sweetness typical of a 2-year-old. Richard, who had hung up the phone when he noticed the commotion, walked toward the group. His first reaction was protectiveness and distrust. A homeless boy near his only precious daughter. "What do you want, kid?" Richard asked firmly. The boy looked up, and Richard was surprised by the maturity he saw there. It wasn't the gaze of an ordinary 10-year-old. "I just want to help her learn, sir. Saw she was sad," the boy replied simply. "And you think you can teach her better than her nanny?" Richard crossed his arms. The boy smiled shyly. "Don't know if I teach better, sir, but I've helped other kids here in the park. Just takes patience," he said, lightly touching the bike's handlebars. "What's your name, Princess?" "Emily," the girl answered, already calmer. "That's a pretty name. I'm Ethan. Want to let me help you ride your beautiful bike?" Emily nodded eagerly. Richard glanced at Nancy, who gave a discreet look of concern. He was late for an important meeting, but something about the boy's sincerity made him hesitate. "All right," Richard said after a moment. "But I'm watching." Ethan nodded respectfully and turned to Emily. "First, let's see if your feet reach the pedals right," Ethan said, carefully adjusting the seat height. "Your bike's really pretty. Pink's a special color." Emily giggled, delighted by the attention. Richard watched the boy's every move, noticing how he checked everything was safe before starting. "Now, Emily, hold the handlebars tight. I'll hold the back so you don't fall, okay?" Ethan positioned himself beside the bike. The girl nodded confidently. It was amazing how quickly she'd trusted the unfamiliar boy. "Pedal slow." "I'm right here," Ethan said, walking alongside as Emily pedaled timidly. Richard noticed the boy wasn't wearing shoes. His bare feet stepped on the hot pavement without any sign of discomfort. It made him think about how different the boy's reality was. "Great job, Emily. You're doing it," Ethan cheered with genuine joy. The girl laughed and pedaled more confidently. Nancy relaxed a little, seeing the boy really seemed to know what he was doing. "Now I'll let go a little, but I'm right here, okay?" Ethan said. To Richard's surprise, Emily pedaled a few feet on her own before losing balance. Ethan quickly steadied the bike before she fell. "Wow, you did it, Princess," Ethan celebrated. Emily clapped, beaming with happiness. Richard felt a strange pang in his chest. For weeks, he had been trying to teach his daughter how to ride a bike, always impatient, always in a hurry. In just a few minutes, that boy had achieved what he couldn't. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "Daddy, look, I did it!" Emily shouted, pointing at Richard. Richard smiled but was confused by his own feelings. He felt proud of his daughter, but also a strange sense of inadequacy. How could a street kid have more patience and skill with his own daughter than he did? "Want to try one more time, Emily?" Ethan asked. "Yes," the girl replied excitedly. Richard checked his watch. He was already very late for his meeting, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. There was something mesmerizing about how Ethan interacted with Emily. "This time I'll count to 3 and let go for longer, okay?" Ethan said, positioning himself again. "Okay." Emily gripped the handlebars tightly. 1, 2, 3, go! Emily pedaled with determination. Ethan ran beside her, his hands barely touching the bike to give her a sense of security. When he finally let go completely, Emily kept pedaling on her own for nearly 10 yards. "I did it! I did it!" the girl cheered when Ethan helped her stop. Richard felt his eyes grow moist. His daughter had learned to ride a bike, and he had almost missed this moment because of a business meeting. "Well done, Princess. Now you know how to ride a bike," Ethan said, crouching to her level. "You just need to practice a lot." Richard stepped forward and pulled out his wallet. "Thank you so much for helping my daughter," Richard said, holding out some bills to Ethan. The boy looked at the money and shook his head. "No need, sir. Seeing her happy is enough for me," Ethan replied with a sincere smile. Richard was taken aback. He was used to solving everything with money. The boy's refusal left him unsure how to respond. "But you must need something," Richard insisted. "Everyone needs something, sir. But some things can't be bought," Ethan said with wisdom beyond his years. Richard put his wallet away, still puzzled. Nancy watched the scene with curiosity. Is there anything you'd like then?" Richard asked. Ethan thought for a moment and smiled shyly. "If it's not too much trouble, sir, I'd love a glass of water. I'm thirsty," the boy said. Richard nodded and signaled to Nancy, who went to fetch water from the car. While they waited, Richard watched Ethan play with Emily, teaching her how to brake properly. "How did you learn to teach kids?" Richard asked. "My grandma always told me kids are like little plants. They need patience and care to grow right," Ethan answered, not taking his eyes off Emily. "Your grandma?" Richard noticed the boy had spoken in the past tense. "She's not here anymore," Ethan said simply, without drama in his voice. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Nancy returned with the water, and Ethan drank eagerly. "Thank you very much, sir," Ethan said, handing back the empty cup. "Daddy, can Ethan come home to play with me?" Emily asked innocently. Richard was speechless. Ethan smiled and shook his head. "Thanks, Princess, but I have to stay here in the park. Other kids might need help," Ethan said. "Other kids?" Richard asked. "Yes, sir. Sometimes kids come who don't know how to ride a bike or skate, or they're crying because they got lost from their parents. I like helping," Ethan explained. Richard was intrigued. Why was such a young boy always in the park helping others? "Do you live around here?" Richard asked carefully. Ethan pointed to a bench under a large tree. "I live there," he said simply. Richard followed the boy's gaze and understood. The bench was surrounded by a few belongings in plastic bags. The boy lived in the park. "Daddy, can we go?" asked Emily, tired of the adults' conversation. "Of course, sweetheart." Richard picked up his daughter and looked at Ethan. "Thank you so much." "No problem, sir. Take good care of the little princess," said Ethan, waving at Emily. Richard walked toward the car with Nancy and Emily. In the back seat, Emily wouldn't stop talking about her new friend. "Daddy, Ethan is so cool, he taught me just right," Emily said excitedly. Richard glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Ethan sitting under the tree, watching other children playing in the park. Something about that image deeply troubled him. For the rest of the day, Richard couldn't focus on the meeting. His mind kept returning to the boy in the park, how he had taught Emily, his refusal of money, his surprising wisdom. That evening, during dinner at their mansion in the best neighborhood of Sacramento, Richard told his wife Jennifer about what had happened. "A homeless boy taught our daughter to ride a bike." Jennifer raised her eyebrows. "He didn't want money, Jen, just asked for a glass of water." Richard absent-mindedly pushed his food around. "How strange," Jennifer remarked. "Do you think he'll start hanging around Emily now?" "I don't know, but he didn't seem to have any ulterior motives. He really just wanted to help." Jennifer grew thoughtful. She had known her husband for 15 years and could tell when something was bothering him. "What's troubling you, Richard?" she asked. Richard let out a deep sigh. "I tried teaching Emily to ride a bike so many times. I always got impatient, always rushed. In 10 minutes, that boy did what I couldn't in weeks." "You're a busy man, Richard. You have a company to run," Jennifer said, trying to comfort him. "But what if that's just an excuse? What if I'm missing important moments in our daughter's life because of work?" Jennifer placed her hand over his on the table. "Emily loves you, Richard. She knows you work hard to give her the best." "But is that really what's best? Money, expensive toys, private schools, and no quality time?" That night, Richard struggled to fall asleep. He kept thinking about the contrast between his life and Ethan's. He had everything money could buy, yet it felt like he had lost something essential along the way. The next morning, Emily woke up asking if she could go to the park to see Ethan. "Daddy, can I go play with Ethan?" she asked during breakfast. Richard glanced at Jennifer, who gave him a doubtful look. "Emily, sweetheart, Ethan might not be there anymore," Jennifer said gently. "But he said he lives there," Emily insisted. Richard felt a pang of sadness remembering that the boy truly lived in the park. He decided to stop by on his way to the office just to check. "All right, we'll make a quick stop at the park," Richard said. Jennifer looked surprised but didn't comment. When they arrived, Emily squealed with joy when she spotted Ethan sitting under the same tree reading an old book. "Ethan!" she called, jumping out of the car and running toward him. Ethan looked up and smiled at the little girl. "Hi, Princess. How's the bike?" he asked, tucking the book away. "It's great. Daddy said I can practice more with you," Emily said, looking hopefully at Richard. Richard felt the weight of his daughter's expectation, but also curiosity about the boy. "Good morning, Ethan," Richard greeted. "Good morning, sir. Princess Emily seems very excited today," Ethan observed. "She hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday," Richard admitted. Ethan smiled shyly. "Glad she remembered. Did you bring the bike?" Richard nodded to Nancy, who took the bike out of the trunk. "Can I see how she's doing?" asked Ethan. "Of course," Richard observed as Ethan examined the bicycle and adjusted a few details. "The tire is a bit flat, sir. Is there somewhere nearby where I can fill it up?" asked Ethan. Richard was impressed by the boy's attention to detail. "There's a gas station 2 blocks from here," said Richard. "Want me to take it to fill up? I know the owner well. He lets us use the pump for free," Ethan offered. Richard hesitated. Handing over his daughter's expensive bicycle to a street kid seemed reckless. "I can go with you," Richard finally said. Ethan nodded naturally, as if he'd expected that answer. As they walked to the gas station, Richard noticed how Ethan greeted several people along the way. The baker, the lady at the newsstand, the candy vendor. Everyone knew him and treated him warmly. "Do you know everyone here?" Richard asked. "I've lived here for 2 years. People got to know me little by little," Ethan explained. 2 years. Richard was shocked. "You've been on the streets for 2 years?" "Since my grandma left," Ethan said simply. Richard wanted to ask more, but sensed the topic was delicate for the boy. At the gas station, the owner indeed let Ethan use the pump for free, and even gave Emily a lollipop. "Ethan is a very special boy," the man told Richard, as Ethan carefully filled the tire. "He's always helping everyone in the neighborhood." "How so?" Richard asked. "He carries groceries for the elderly, plays with kids whose parents are working, sometimes even helps find lost pets. He's like the neighborhood's little guardian angel." Richard looked at Ethan differently now. He wasn't just a street kid. He was someone who'd found his place in the community through kindness. "All set, sir," Ethan said, testing the tire. "Now it's perfect for the little princess." On the way back, Emily held Ethan's hand as if they were siblings. Richard felt a mix of tenderness and worry seeing the bond forming between them. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" Richard said when they reached the park. "Of course, sir." "Why won't you accept help? Yesterday you refused the money." Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "My grandma always taught me that we can't rely only on others' kindness. She said if you take too much, you stop fighting for yourself." "But you're just a child," Richard said gently. "I'm 10, sir. I know how to take care of myself," Ethan replied with dignity. Richard admired the boy's independence, but was uneasy about a child having to be so self-reliant. Emily spent the whole afternoon playing in the park under Ethan's care, while Richard watched from a nearby bench. He cancelled his afternoon meetings, something unthinkable just days before. Watching Ethan, Richard noticed other adults in the park trusted him too. Mothers let their kids play with him while they ran quick errands. It was clear the boy had earned the whole community's trust. "Mr. Richard," Ethan said as the sun began to set, "the little princess is sleepy. Richard looked and saw Emily yawning on the swing. "You're right. It's time to go home," Richard said, scooping his daughter into his arms. "Daddy, can we come back tomorrow?" Emily asked sleepily. "We'll see, sweetheart," Richard said, avoiding promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "Bye, Ethan," Emily waved. "Bye, Princess. Dream of angels," Ethan replied affectionately. In the car, Richard was lost in thought. Jennifer noticed his expression when they got home. "How was your day?" she asked. "Eye-opening," Richard replied. "That boy, there's something special about him, Jenny." "What do you mean?" Richard shared how Ethan was respected and loved in the community, how he took such good care of his bike, how other adults trusted him. "It seems he found a family in the neighborhood," Jennifer observed. "Exactly. But still, he's a child living on the streets, Jenny. That's not right." Jennifer saw the growing concern in her husband's eyes. "What are you thinking, Richard?" "I'm thinking maybe we can help him somehow. Not with money, but, I don't know, maybe making sure he goes to school, that he has a safe place to sleep." "Richard, you barely know this boy. What if he doesn't want help? What if his family shows up?" Jennifer raised practical concerns. "What if no one else cares about him?" Richard replied. "Jenny, when I look at him, I see—" Richard paused, unsure how to explain what he felt. "See what?" Jennifer pressed gently. "I see a child who deserves a chance. I see someone who taught our daughter in 10 minutes what I couldn't in weeks. I see pure kindness." Jennifer sighed. She recognized that determined look in her husband's eyes. "So, what are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet, but I want to keep going to the park with Emily. I want to get to know Ethan better. I want to understand how I can truly help." "All right," Jennifer agreed. "But promise me we'll take it slow. I don't want our family caught up in something complicated." "I promise," Richard said, kissing his wife's forehead. That night, Richard struggled to sleep again. He kept thinking about his own privileged childhood, where he never lacked anything, and comparing it to Ethan's reality. How could a child in such hardship be so generous and wise? The next day, Richard made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of heading straight to the office, he stopped by the park early in the morning. Ethan was helping an elderly woman carry her groceries. "Good morning, Ethan," Richard greeted. "Good morning, Mr. Richard." Ethan smiled. "Princess Emily didn't come today." "She's still asleep. I came to talk to you," Richard said. Ethan thanked the woman, who kissed his forehead before leaving. "Mrs. Margaret always shops really early," Ethan explained. "She has arthritis in her hands and can't carry heavy things." Richard was struck again by the boy's attentiveness to others' needs. "Ethan, can I ask you a personal question?" Richard said. "Sure, sir. Have you ever thought about going back to school?" Ethan's expression tightened slightly. "I've tried, sir, but it's complicated." "Complicated how?" "To enroll, you need a guardian. A fixed address, a uniform, school supplies." Ethan listed the obstacles. "What if someone helped with those things?" Richard asked carefully. Ethan looked at Richard with suspicion for the first time. "Why do you want to help me?" he asked directly. The question caught Richard off guard. He wasn't even sure of the answer himself. Because I think every child deserves a chance to learn," Richard said. "And what will you want in return?" Ethan asked, his distrust shaped by experience. Richard understood the boy had faced situations where help came with strings attached. "Nothing, Ethan. Absolutely nothing," Richard said sincerely. Ethan studied Richard's face for a long moment. "People have offered help before, sir. There was always a hidden condition." "What kind of condition?" Richard's stomach tightened. "Sometimes they wanted me to lie about my age to work. Sometimes they wanted other things." Ethan looked away. Richard felt anger toward those who had tried to exploit the boy's vulnerability. "Ethan, look at me," Richard said firmly. "I want nothing from you except to see you safe, nothing more." "Why?" Ethan asked, still wary. Richard searched for an honest answer. "Because you taught my daughter something I couldn't. Because you're kind and smart. Because every child deserves an adult who cares about them." Ethan stayed silent for a long time. Can I think about it? He finally asked. Of course. There's no rush, said Richard. But while you think, I want you to know the offer is sincere. Richard started to walk away when Ethan called out to him, Mr. Richard. Yes? Thank you for asking first. Most adults don't ask. They just decide what's best for us. Richard nodded and left the Central Park with a heavy heart. The forced maturity of that boy was both admirable and tragic. Over the following days, Richard and Emily returned to the Central Park regularly. Jennifer sometimes joined them and was also won over by Ethan's sweetness. He really is special, Jennifer admitted after an afternoon watching Ethan play with Emily. But Richard, what if he accepts our help and then his family shows up? What if we bond with him and then have to walk away? Those are risks I'm willing to take, Richard said. Jen, when I look at him, I feel like this is what we're meant to do. Why? Explain to me what you really feel, Jennifer asked. Richard paused, searching for the right words. I feel like he teaches me more than I could ever teach him. I feel like our family is incomplete without him around. I feel like Emily is learning values I could never teach with words alone. Jennifer studied her husband carefully. And you don't think it might just be guilt, because we have so much and he has so little? Maybe, partly, Richard admitted. But it's more than that. It's like he's bringing something back to our family that I didn't even realize was missing. What? Simplicity, gratitude, the ability to find joy in small things. When he smiles at Emily, when she laughs with him, it's a genuine happiness you can't buy. Jennifer nodded, understanding what her husband felt. A week later, Ethan sought Richard out in the Central Park. Mr. Richard, can I talk to you? The boy asked. Of course, Ethan. I thought a lot about what you offered. About school, Ethan said, nervously fiddling with a twig. And? I'd like to accept, Ethan said, looking up at Richard. But with one condition. What is it? I want to keep living here in the Central Park, at least for now. The people here need me, and I feel safe here. Richard felt a pang of sadness, but respected the boy's decision. That's fine, Ethan. We'll sort out the paperwork for school, but you stay where you're comfortable. Thank you, Mr. Richard, Ethan said with a radiant smile. Richard immediately began the process of enrolling Ethan in school. He discovered it would require temporary guardianship, involving social workers and child services. During the first visit from the social worker, Amanda Johnson, Richard grew nervous. What if she doubted his intentions? Mr. Anderson, it's unusual for a family to seek guardianship of a child they haven't known for long, Amanda said during the interview. I understand the concern, Richard replied, but we've known Ethan for a few weeks now, and our daughter has formed a strong bond with him. And what exactly is the arrangement you're proposing? Amanda asked. We want to ensure he has access to education and medical care. As for housing, we'll respect his choice for now. Amanda took several notes. I'll need to speak with the child separately, she said. Of course, Richard agreed. The conversation between Amanda and Ethan took place on a bench in the Central Park. Richard watched from a distance, anxious. Ethan, tell me how you met the Anderson family, Amanda asked. Princess Sarah couldn't figure out how to ride her bike. She was crying, so I helped her, Ethan said simply. And since then, have they been coming here? Yeah, Mr. Richard is really kind. He doesn't try to force me to do anything. He just offered to help me study. Do you want to study, Ethan? I really do. Ethan's eyes sparkled. My grandma always said that learning was the only thing no one could take away from me. Tell me about your grandmother. Ethan's face grew somber. She raised me since I was a baby. My parents, they couldn't take care of me. Grandma worked cleaning offices at night. During the day, she looked after me and taught me things. What happened to her? She got really sick, had to go to the hospital, and never came back. Ethan wiped his eyes discreetly. And since then, you've been alone? At first it was hard, but the people here took me in. Mrs. Margaret gives me food when I can help her. Mr. Frank at the gas station lets me use the hose to shower when the Central Park is empty. Everyone looks out for me a little. Amanda was impressed by the informal support network the boy had built. Ethan, do you trust the Anderson family? I do. They've never lied to me, never tried to force me to do anything. And little Princess Emily, she's like the little sister I always wanted. After their talk, Amanda sought out Richard. Mr. Anderson, Ethan is an extraordinary boy, but I also need to warn you that cases like this can be complicated if relatives come forward claiming guardianship. We understand the risks, Richard said, but we can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. Amanda nodded in approval. I'll recommend temporary guardianship for educational and medical purposes, but for now, we have to respect his living arrangements. Richard agreed, relieved. 2 weeks later, Ethan was officially enrolled at the neighborhood public school. Richard offered a private school, but Ethan preferred the public one to stay close to his friends in the community. On his first day, Richard and Emily walked Ethan to the school gate. Nervous? Richard asked. A little, Ethan admitted. It's been a long time since I've been in school. You'll do great, Emily said, taking Ethan's hand. You're the smartest person I know. Ethan smiled and bent down to kiss Emily's forehead. Thanks, little princess. I'll tell you all about it this afternoon, okay? Okay, Emily replied excitedly. Richard felt a deep emotion watching Ethan walk into school with his new backpack and clean uniform. It was a milestone for all of them. That afternoon, Ethan returned to the Central Park, beaming. How was it? Richard asked eagerly. It was amazing. The teacher is really nice. The kids welcomed me, and I even helped a boy who was struggling with math, Ethan said enthusiastically. Of course you did, Richard laughed. You can't see someone in trouble without wanting to help. Ethan laughed too. The teacher said I'll need some extra classes to catch up, but she thinks I can do it. I know you can, Richard said proudly. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The following months brought a new routine for everyone. Ethan went to school in the morning, played with Emily in the Central Park in the afternoon, and sometimes Richard helped him with homework at night. Jennifer, who had been cautious at first, was won over by Ethan's dedication to his studies and his affection for Emily. He's at the top of his class in every subject, Richard told Jennifer after a parent-teacher meeting. I'm not surprised, Jennifer said. He has a hunger for learning that's remarkable. The teacher said he even helps struggling classmates during recess. Instead of playing, he teaches math to those who need it. Jennifer smiled. That's so like Ethan, always looking out for others. One day, Richard had an idea. Ethan, how about coming over for dinner tonight? He invited. Ethan hesitated. I don't know, Mr. Richard. I've never had dinner at a family's home before. It would be wonderful for us. Emily would be thrilled, and Jennifer is curious to get to know you better. Okay, Ethan agreed nervously. That evening, Ethan arrived at the Anderson house wearing his best clothes, which were still quite worn. Richard noticed the boy's effort to dress up. Ethan! Emily shouted, running to hug him. Hi, Princess. Your home is really beautiful, said Ethan, looking around curiously, but without envy. Jennifer approached with a warm smile. Hi, Ethan. Finally, we'll have a real conversation, she said. Hi, Mrs. Jennifer. Thank you for inviting me. During dinner, Ethan behaved with impeccable manners. He ate slowly, thanked them repeatedly, and asked polite questions about the family. Ethan, Richard told me you want to be a teacher when you grow up, said Jennifer. That's true. I think teaching is the most important thing there is. My grandma always said that when you teach someone, you're planting a better future. Richard and Jennifer exchanged emotional glances. Your grandmother sounds like she was a very wise woman, Jennifer remarked. She was. She only studied up to 4th grade, but she knew more about life than any book, Ethan said wistfully. After dinner, Ethan helped clear the table without being asked. You don't have to do that, Ethan, said Jennifer. My grandma taught me that when someone welcomes you into their home, you help however you can, Ethan explained. When it was time for Ethan to return to the park, Emily grew sad. Can't Ethan stay here tonight? She asked. Richard looked at Jennifer, who gave a discreet nod of approval. Ethan, if you'd like, you can stay in the guest room tonight, Richard offered. Ethan hesitated. Thank you, but I like sleeping under the stars. At the park I can see the whole sky. Richard understood that pushing would be counterproductive. That's fine, but the offer always stands. On the way back to the park, Richard walked with Ethan. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Richard. It was the first time I've eaten at a family table since my grandma was alive. It was a pleasure having you, Ethan. You're always welcome. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Of course. Why do you do all this for me? I still don't really understand. Richard stopped walking and looked at the boy. Want the honest answer? I do. Because you teach me every day how to be a better person. Because since I met you, I've started paying attention to what really matters. Because you make my daughter happy in a way I never could. But I'm just a kid, Ethan said, confused. Ethan, sometimes kids are the best teachers. You see the world in a way we adults have forgotten. Ethan smiled shyly. My grandma used to say that everyone who passes through our lives leaves a lesson. Maybe you're her lesson for me. Richard felt his eyes grow moist. And you're the lesson I didn't know I needed. Months passed, and Ethan's life settled into a happy routine. He still lived in the park, but spent most of his time with the Anderson family. His grades at school were excellent, and he became beloved by all his teachers. One day, however, social worker Amanda appeared at the park with a worried expression. Richard, Ethan, I need to talk to you, she said. What's wrong? Asked Richard, sensing something was off. An aunt of Ethan's has come forward. She's claiming custody of him. Ethan paled. What aunt? He asked, his voice trembling. A sister of your grandmother. She lives in Los Angeles and says she just found out you were alone. But why has she never shown up before? Asked Richard. She claims she didn't know her sister that you were alone. She says she wants to take care of you now. Ethan was clearly shaken. I don't know her, he said quietly. She has legal custody rights, Ethan. She's blood-related, Amanda explained gently. Richard felt the ground slip from under his feet. What does this mean for our guardianship? It means you might have to say goodbye, Amanda said regretfully. Ethan began to cry silently. Richard instinctively hugged him. When does she want to take Ethan? Asked Richard. Tomorrow. She came all the way from Los Angeles to get him. Tomorrow? Richard panicked. But that's too soon. Ethan needs time to process this. Unfortunately, the court decision has already been made. The woman provided documents proving her relation and ability to care for him. That evening, Richard, Jennifer, and Emily went to the Central Park to spend their last hours with Ethan. Emily didn't fully understand what was happening but sensed the adult's sadness. Is Ethan going on a trip? She asked innocently. Yes, sweetheart. He's going to live with his aunt in Los Angeles, Jennifer explained, her voice breaking. But will he come back to play with me? Emily insisted. Ethan picked her up in his arms. Princess, Los Angeles is far from here, but I'll never forget you, okay? Emily started crying, realizing this was a real goodbye. I don't want you to go, she sobbed. I don't want to either, Princess. But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to. Richard stepped aside to talk privately with Ethan. How are you feeling? He asked. Scared, Ethan admitted. I don't know this aunt. What if she's bad? What if she just wants to use me for something? Ethan, you're smart and strong. If anything feels wrong, you can always reach out to us, okay? Anytime. Promise you won't forget me? Ethan asked in a small voice. How could I ever forget you? You changed our family forever. You changed my life too. You showed me there are good adults in the world. Richard hugged Ethan tightly. You're going to be an amazing man, Ethan. I know it. The next morning, a woman around 40 arrived at the park with Amanda. It was the aunt, Deborah. Are you Ethan? She asked, looking him up and down. Yes, he replied timidly. My, how you've grown. The last time I saw you, you were a baby. Richard studied the woman carefully. She seemed genuinely emotional, but something about her mannerisms made him uneasy. And you're the family who's been taking care of him? Deborah asked Richard and Jennifer. We are, Richard replied. Ethan is a special boy. I can imagine. Poor thing living on the streets all this time. But Aunt Deborah is here to take care of you now, sweetheart. Richard noticed Ethan didn't seem comfortable with her sudden closeness. Come on, Ethan. I've got a bus for us to leave today. You must be excited to see your new home, Deborah said. Today? Ethan asked, alarmed. Of course, no reason to stay here any longer. You have a real family now. The phrase, real family, hit Richard like a punch. Deborah was clearly dismissing the bond they'd built. Can I say goodbye properly? Ethan asked, tears in his eyes. Of course, sweetheart, but quickly. The bus won't wait. Ethan hugged Emily, who was crying inconsolably. Take good care of your bike, Princess, and remember what I taught you, always be kind to everyone. I'll remember, Emily sobbed. He turned to Jennifer. Thank you for welcoming me into your home, Mrs. Jennifer. It was the best dinner of my life. Jennifer hugged him tightly, fighting back tears. You're a wonderful boy, Ethan. Never forget that. Finally, he said goodbye to Richard. Thank you for everything, Mr. Anderson. For helping me with school, for believing in me, for teaching me what it's like to have a father. Richard couldn't hold back his tears. Thank you for teaching me how to be a better father. You'll always have a place in our family, Ethan. Deborah impatiently took Ethan's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We have to go. Ethan left the Central Park, looking back several times. Richard, Jennifer, and Emily stood there, watching the boy who had changed their lives disappear around the corner. Daddy, why did Ethan have to leave? Asked Emily between sobs. Richard didn't know how to explain the unfairness of the situation to a 2-year-old. Because the law says he has to live with his blood family, sweetheart. But aren't we his family? Emily asked, confused. Yes, we are, Emily. We're family in our hearts, Jennifer replied. The following days were hard for the Anderson family. Emily kept asking when Ethan would return. Richard struggled to focus at work. Jennifer tried to keep things normal, but also felt the emptiness the boy had left behind. 2 weeks later, Richard got an unexpected call. Hello, he answered. Mr. Anderson, it's Ethan, said a small voice on the other end. Richard stood up immediately. Ethan, how are you? Is everything okay? No, sir, it's not. The boy's voice was clearly shaken. What's going on? Aunt Deborah, she took me to Los Angeles, but she's not like you. She just wants me to work. Richard's heart raced. What do you mean, work? She makes me sell candy at traffic lights, says I have to pay for food and a bed, and when I don't sell enough, she gets mad. Richard felt fury rising in his chest. Ethan, where are you now? At a payphone near the house. She left, and I ran out to call you. Give me your address. I'm coming to get you right now. You'd do that? Ethan's voice was full of hope. Of course I would. Tell me the address. Richard quickly wrote it down and hung up. He immediately called Amanda, the social worker. Amanda, Richard Anderson. Ethan is in danger. His aunt is using him for child labor. Are you sure? Amanda asked, alarmed. He just called me. He's being forced to sell candy at traffic lights to pay for food and shelter. This is serious. I'll contact the authorities in Los Angeles right away. I'm heading there now to get him. Richard, be careful. This has to be done through legal channels. I understand, but I can't leave him there another day. Richard rushed out of the house, driving as fast as he legally could. During the 3-hour trip to Los Angeles, he called Amanda several times to coordinate with the proper authorities. When he arrived at the address Ethan had given, he found the boy hiding behind a tree in the nearby park. He was visibly thinner and wearing dirty clothes. Ethan! Richard called, stepping out of the car. Mr. Anderson! Ethan ran and threw himself into Richard's arms. Richard held him tight, feeling the boy tremble. It's okay now. I'm here, Richard whispered. I knew you'd come, Ethan said through tears. I knew I could trust you. Of course you can. Always. Richard pulled back to look at Ethan's face. Did she hurt you? Not physically. But she yells a lot when I don't sell enough candy, and she says I'm a burden, that I should be grateful she took me off the streets. Richard wanted to find Deborah and give her a piece of his mind, but restrained himself. Let's get out of here. Amanda is arranging everything for you to come back with us. Really, I can come back? Ethan's eyes shone. If it's up to me, you'll never be separated from our family again. On the way back to Sacramento, Ethan shared more details about his 2 weeks in Los Angeles. She'd wake me up at 5 in the morning to go sell candy in traffic. She said kids got more pity and sold more. At night, I had to count all the money for her. What about school? Did she enroll you? She said school was a waste of time, that I had to work to support myself. Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly, controlling his anger. You won't go through that again, Ethan. I promise. When they got home, Emily shouted with joy when she saw Ethan. Ethan's back! Ethan's back! She ran to hug him. Hi, Princess. I missed you so much, Ethan said, holding her tight. Jennifer stood at the door with tears in her eyes. Welcome back home, she said simply. That night, Ethan agreed to sleep in the guest room for the first time. I'm scared of sleeping in the park and Aunt Deborah finding me, he admitted. You're safe here, Ethan, Richard assured him. Amanda is handling everything legally. You won't have to go back there. In the following days, the legal process to remove Ethan from Deborah's custody intensified. The social worker from Los Angeles conducted a full investigation and discovered Deborah had a history of using children for child labor. Her custody has been revoked, Amanda announced a week later, and she'll face charges for child exploitation. Richard and Jennifer sighed in relief. And now, Jennifer asked. Now you can file for permanent custody if you want, Amanda said. We do, Richard and Jennifer answered in unison. Ethan, who had been listening, began to cry. Can I really stay with you forever? He asked through tears. If you want, Richard said, hugging him. I really do. You're my real family. The adoption process took a few months but was finally completed. On the day of the final hearing, when the judge officially declared Ethan the son of Richard and Jennifer Anderson, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Ethan Anderson, the judge said with a smile. How does that sound? It sounds like a dream come true, Ethan replied with a radiant smile. Sarah, who now understood the situation better, shouted in the room, Now Ethan is my real brother. Everyone laughed, including the judge. After the hearing, the family went home to celebrate. During dinner, Richard made a toast. To Ethan, who taught us that family isn't about blood, but about love and choice. To Ethan, who brought so much joy to our home, Jennifer added. To my brother, who's the best teacher in the world, Sarah said, raising her juice glass. Ethan was too emotional to speak. Finally, he managed to say, Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for loving me when I had no one. Thank you for giving me a family. That night, Ethan wanted to sleep in his new room, which Richard and Jennifer had decorated just for him. There was a desk for studying, bookshelves, and even some family photos on the wall. Good night, son, Richard said, kissing Ethan's forehead. It was the first time Richard had officially called him his son. Ethan smiled with shining eyes. Good night, Dad. The years that followed brought much happiness to the Anderson family. Ethan remained the top student in school and developed a tutoring program for children with learning difficulties. He's exactly how I imagined he'd be, his teacher remarked to Richard during a parent-teacher meeting. Brilliant, dedicated, and always willing to help his classmates. He was born to teach, Richard agreed proudly. Sarah, now 5, was learning to read with Ethan's help. They kept a daily study routine that felt more like play. Ethan is the best brother in the world, Sarah declared one night at dinner. He teaches me everything with so much patience. He learned that from his grandmother, said Richard, looking affectionately at Ethan. Ethan smiled. Grandma always said teaching is an act of love. When you have the patience to teach someone, you're showing you care about their future. Jennifer touched Ethan's hand on the table. Your grandmother raised a wonderful boy, and you're finishing the work she started, Ethan replied. One day, Richard had an idea. Ethan, how about we visit the park where we first met? It's been a while since we've been there. That'd be great, Ethan agreed. I want to see how all my friends are doing. The following Saturday, the whole family went to the Central Park. To Richard's surprise, several people recognized Ethan and came to greet him. Ethan, look how you've grown, exclaimed Mrs. Margaret, the elderly woman he always helped. "Hi, Mrs. Margaret. How are you?" Ethan hugged her warmly. "Very well, my dear. I heard you were adopted by this wonderful family. I'm so happy for you." Frank from the gas station also appeared. "The little doctor," he teased. "I heard you're doing really well in school." "I am, Frank. And how about you?" "Doing just fine. Proud to have known you since you were little. Always knew you'd be special." Richard watched with emotion as Ethan was cherished by the entire community. These were simple people who had welcomed an abandoned child with what little they had. "Thank you," Richard said to Mrs. Margaret. "Thank you for looking after him when he needed it most." "Oh, sir, he's the one who looked after us. Ethan was always the little angel of our park," she replied fondly. Later, sitting on the same bench where Ethan used to sleep, the family talked about how their lives had changed. "Do you miss living here?" Emily asked Ethan. "Sometimes I miss seeing the stars every night," Ethan admitted. "But I don't miss being hungry or cold or not knowing what would happen the next day." "And we'll never let you go through that again," Jennifer assured him. "I know," Ethan said, smiling. "You've given me the most important thing in the world, the certainty that I'm loved." Richard felt his eyes grow moist. "We're the ones who should be thanking you, Ethan. You've taught us what really matters in life." "What's that?" Emily asked curiously. "That the greatest wealth isn't money, but the love we share," Richard answered. "That kindness and generosity are the greatest treasures anyone can have. And that family is about choosing to love each other every day," Jennifer added. Ethan looked at each member of his adoptive family and felt deep gratitude. "My grandma used to say everything in life happens for a reason. I think the reason I lived on the streets was to find you. And the reason we came to the park that day was to find you," Richard said. Emily, who had been listening to the adults' serious conversation, decided to add her own thoughts. "And the reason I couldn't ride a bike was so Ethan could teach me and become my brother," she declared with a child's simple logic. Everyone laughed at Emily's straightforward perspective. "You're right, sweetheart," Ethan said, hugging her. "Sometimes the things that seem bad at first are the path to something really good." As they walked back to the car, Richard reflected on the journey they'd taken. A few years ago, he was a money-obsessed businessman who barely knew his own daughter. Now he was a more present father, a more attentive husband, and a man who understood the true value of things. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked, noticing her husband's thoughtful expression. "How a 10-year-old boy completely changed the life perspective of a 40-year-old man." "Ethan has that gift," Jennifer agreed. "He sees the goodness in people and brings it out." "Dad," called Ethan, who was walking ahead with Emily. "Yes? Thank you for stopping to listen to me that day. Most adults would have just given me money and walked away. Thank you for teaching me that listening is more important than giving money," replied Richard. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. 2 years later, Ethan was in his first year of high school and Emily was in her first year of elementary school. Both were excellent students, but Emily had a special advantage: a brother who helped her with all her school struggles. "Ethan, I don't understand why 7 plus 5 is 12, Emily complained one afternoon during their study session. "Let's think of it differently," Ethan said patiently. "You have 7 dolls and I give you 5 more. How many dolls do you have in total?" Emily counted on her fingers and her eyes lit up. 12. "Exactly. Math is just counting things you like," Ethan explained. Richard watched from the office door and smiled. Ethan's patience in teaching was endless, just as it had been that first day in the park. "He's going to be an amazing teacher," Jennifer remarked, appearing beside her husband. "He already is," Richard replied. "Every time I see him teaching Emily, I remember that first day, the way he taught her to ride a bike, and changed our lives forever." One day, Ethan's school organized a career fair where students had to present what profession they wanted to pursue. Ethan chose to give a presentation about becoming a teacher. "Why do you want to be a teacher, Ethan?" the coordinator asked during his presentation. "Because I believe education is the most powerful tool to change people's lives," Ethan answered with conviction. "When you teach someone, you're not just sharing knowledge, You're showing you care about their future. And where did you learn that? From my grandmother, who raised me. She always said studying was the one thing no one could take from me, and also from my family now, who showed me how knowledge can open doors. The coordinator was moved by the maturity of his answer. Do you already tutor? Not officially, but I help my classmates and my little sister at home. How about we start a pilot program here at school? You could help students struggling with math and English. Ethan's eyes lit up. That would be a dream. Richard and Jennifer, who were in the audience watching, exchanged proud glances. Ethan's tutoring program at school was a huge success. Within months, the grades of the students he helped improved significantly. It's impressive, the math teacher told Richard during a meeting. Ethan has a unique way of explaining complex concepts simply, and most importantly, he never loses patience. He learned that early in life, Richard said. Had to grow up too young. Well, that maturity is benefiting many of his peers. Several parents have already praised his work. At home, Ethan excitedly shared stories about his students at school. Today, I helped Jennifer from my class with fractions. She was crying because she didn't understand, but when I explained it using pizza, she got it right away, he said during dinner. How did you use pizza to explain fractions? Emily asked curiously. It's easy. A whole pizza is one whole. If you cut it into 4 equal slices, each slice is a quarter. If you eat 2 slices, you've eaten 2 quarters, which is the same as a half. Emily clapped her hands. That's so cool. Now I understand fractions too. Richard and Jennifer exchanged amused looks. Your brother has a gift for simplifying things, Jennifer observed. It's because he remembers what it's like to be a child and not understand something, said Richard. He has real empathy. A year later, when Ethan was in his sophomore year of high school, he received an unexpected offer. Ethan, the city's Department of Education wants to speak with you, the school principal announced. With me? Why? Ethan asked, surprised. They've heard about your tutoring work and want to expand the program to other schools in the city. Richard was incredibly proud when he heard the news. He hasn't even finished high school yet and is already being recognized as an educator, he remarked to Jennifer. He was born for this, she replied. It's amazing how he found his calling so early. At the meeting with the Department of Education, Ethan impressed the staff with his ideas about teaching. How do you see the role of a teacher, Ethan? The secretary asked. I think a teacher shouldn't just teach subjects. They should teach children to believe in themselves, Ethan answered. When a child struggles with math, for example, the problem often isn't the math itself. It's that they believe they're bad with numbers. And how do you change that? By showing them they already use math every day without realizing it. When they share a snack with their sibling, they're doing division. When they save money to buy something, they're adding and subtracting. Math isn't just formulas on a board. The secretary took notes. What other subjects do you think are important? All of them. But I believe we should teach more about kindness and empathy, Ethan said. Children who learn to be kind grow into better adults. Interesting. And where did you learn that? From life, Ethan replied simply. And from my family, who taught me that being smart means nothing if you're not a good person. After the meeting, the department decided to create a citywide peer tutoring program with Ethan as the student coordinator. That's a big responsibility for a 16-year-old, Richard commented. He's ready, Jennifer said with conviction. Ethan has always been mature beyond his years. The program launched with Ethan training other students to become tutors in their respective schools. The success was immediate. The average grades in participating schools rose by 20%, the secretary reported a few months later. But more importantly, dropout rates dropped drastically. Why do you think that happened? Richard asked. Because when one child helps another, they both feel important, Ethan explained. The one teaching gains confidence and the one learning feels supported. Emily, now 8 years old, watched her brother's success with admiration. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher like Ethan, she declared one day. Why? Jennifer asked. Because he teaches people how to be happy, not just how to do math. Emily's simple observation deeply moved the whole family. She's right, Richard said. Ethan doesn't just teach subjects. He teaches self-esteem, confidence, kindness. It's what our grandmother called education of the heart, Ethan replied. Knowledge without kindness is useless. By his junior year, Ethan had already decided he wanted to study education. His grades were excellent and he could easily earn a scholarship to any university. "I have an offer for you," Richard said during a family dinner. "What is it?" Ethan asked curiously. "If you'd like, I can pay for your college. You wouldn't have to worry about scholarships or working while studying." Ethan was touched by the offer but hesitated. "Dad, that's incredibly generous, but I'd like to earn my scholarship." "Why?" Jennifer asked. "Because I want to prove to myself that I can get there on my own merits. And also because I want to be an example for other boys who are in a situation similar to the one I was in." Richard smiled proudly. "How you keep surprising me, son. But if I don't get the scholarship, can I still accept your help?" asked Ethan with a smile. "Of course, always." Not only did Ethan get the scholarship, but he was also accepted with exceptional grades into the best public university in the region. "Congratulations, my love," said Jennifer, hugging him when the news arrived. "I'm so proud of you," said Richard, tears in his eyes. Emily, now understanding the importance of the moment, ran to hug her brother. "You're the smartest brother in the world." "I'm not just smart, little princess. I had a family who believed in me," replied Ethan, looking affectionately at Richard and Jennifer. The high school graduation was a special moment for the whole family. Ethan was chosen to give the farewell speech for his class. "Dear classmates, teachers, and families," Ethan began at the microphone. "When I entered this school 3 years ago, I was just a boy who had been adopted. Today I leave here as someone who has found his purpose in life." The audience listened in silence. "I learned here that education isn't just about memorizing formulas or historical dates. It's about learning to think, to question, to dream. It's about discovering that we all have something special to offer the world." Richard was too emotional to hold back his tears. "To my classmates, I want to say, never give up on your dreams, no matter where you come from or what obstacles you face. If I, who once lived on the streets, can stand here today talking about going to college, you can achieve anything you want." The audience erupted in applause. "And to my family," Ethan looked directly at Richard, Jennifer, and Emily. "Thank you for teaching me that family is about love, not blood. Thank you for giving me not just a home, but also the confidence to dream big." When Ethan stepped off the stage after receiving his diploma, Richard was waiting with a proud hug. "Your speech was perfect, son. I learned from the best teacher I know," said Ethan. "Who?" "Life. And you, who taught me to turn struggles into strengths." During the break before starting college, Ethan decided to do something special. "I want to go back to the park where we met and start a reading project for the kids in the community," he announced. "What kind of project?" asked Jennifer. "I want to read stories to them, help those who struggle with reading, show them that books can be fun." Richard was moved by the idea. "You want to give back to the community that took you in?" "Exactly. Those people looked after me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to give back." The Stories in the Park project launched with great success. Every Saturday morning, Ethan went to the Central Park with children's books and told stories to the neighborhood kids. "Uncle Ethan, tell the story about the boy who became a teacher," asked a 6-year-old girl. "What story is that?" Ethan asked, smiling. "Yours. My mom told me you used to live here in the park and now you're going to be a teacher." Ethan was moved to realize he had become a positive role model for the community's children. "All right, I'll tell the story of a boy who discovered that the greatest treasure in the world is the kindness of people." The children sat in a circle, eager to listen. "Once upon a time, there was a boy who had no home, but he had a heart full of love to give. One day, he saw a little girl crying because she couldn't ride a bike. Richard, who had arrived to pick up Ethan, stopped to listen to the story being told. Hearing Ethan narrate his own journey in a playful way for the children was touching. When the story ended, one of the children raised their hand. "Uncle Ethan, what's the moral of the story?" "The moral is that we all have something valuable to offer others. It doesn't matter if we're rich or poor, small or big. What matters is the kindness in our hearts." "And also that family isn't just those we're born with, right?" added another child. "Exactly. Family is whoever chooses to love and care for us. After the project in the park, Richard approached Ethan. How does it feel telling your own story? Good. It's important for these kids to know that hardships don't determine our future, that there's always hope. You've become a symbol of hope for them. I hope so. If I can inspire even one child not to give up on their dreams, it'll all be worth it. When Ethan started college, his life got even busier. Between classes, studying, and the park project, he barely had any free time. But he never neglected his time with Emily. Ethan, are you going to stop helping me with my homework now that you're in college? Emily asked worriedly. Never, little princess. You're my first and most important student, Ethan replied, ruffling her hair. Promise? I promise. Besides, you're helping me practice for when I become a real teacher. Emily smiled in relief. In college, Ethan stood out immediately. His professors were impressed by his maturity and practical knowledge about education. Ethan, have you taught before? Asked his teaching methods professor after an exceptional presentation. Informally, yes. I've been tutoring since high school. It shows. You have an intuitive understanding of how children learn that most students only develop by the end of the program. I've had good teachers in life, Ethan replied modestly. During his first semester, Ethan met Amanda, a fellow education major. Are you the Ethan who started that tutoring program in public schools? She asked after class. I am, Ethan answered shyly. My little sister was part of the program. She always talks about how you changed her school life. That's good to hear, Ethan said with a smile. Can I ask you a personal question? Amanda said, and of course. Why did you decide to become a teacher? Most guys want to be engineers, doctors. Ethan thought for a moment. Because I believe teachers change the world, one child at a time. When you teach a child to read, you're giving them the key to all the knowledge in the world. Amanda was struck by his answer. You're really different from other guys our age. I grew up fast, Ethan said simply. Want to have lunch with me tomorrow? I'd love to hear more of your story. Ethan accepted the invitation, and so began a friendship that would grow over time. At home, Ethan told his family about Amanda. She seems nice, Emily commented. Is she pretty? Emily, Jennifer laughed. What kind of question is that? It's just that Ethan's never talked about any girl before, Emily explained innocently. Ethan turned red. We're just friends, Emily. She wants to learn more about the tutoring project. Richard and Jennifer exchanged amused glances but didn't say anything. The following months brought many changes. Ethan and Amanda grew close, both academically and personally. She helped him with the more theoretical subjects, while he shared his practical experience. You have a unique perspective on education, Amanda said during a study session. Most of us learned about kids from books. You learned by living with them. That's true, but books are important too. You've taught me so much theory I didn't know. That's why we make a good study team, Amanda smiled. One day, Amanda was invited to dinner at the Andersons' house. Finally, we get to meet the famous Amanda, Emily teased when Ethan told them about the invitation. Please behave, Ethan asked, though he was clearly excited. At dinner, Sarah was enchanted by the family dynamics. You're exactly how Ethan described you, she said to Richard and Jennifer. A family full of love. Ethan brought so much love into our home too, Jennifer replied. He told me part of your story. It's amazing how a chance meeting in the park changed so many lives. It wasn't chance, Emily said with the wisdom of her 10 years. It was destiny. Everyone laughed at the little girl's conviction. Emily might be right, Richard agreed. Sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them. After dinner, Sarah and Ethan talked in the garden. Your family is incredible, Sarah said. They're my life, Ethan replied. They saved me in ways you can't even imagine. How so? They didn't just take me off the streets. They taught me I had worth, that I could dream big, that I deserved love. Without them, I'd never be in college. Sarah touched Ethan's hand. And they're lucky to have you too. Any parent would be proud to have a son like you. In his second year of college, Ethan received an offer to intern at a school in an underserved part of the city. It's exactly the kind of experience you need, the course coordinator said. A school with many social challenges. Ethan accepted immediately. In his first week, he deeply connected with many of the children. "Teacher, why does Ethan understand us so well?" an 8-year-old student asked the lead teacher. "Why do you think he understands you?" the teacher asked curiously. "Because when I say I can't do my homework because my mom works nights and is tired during the day, he doesn't get mad. He helps me." "And why is that different?" The other teachers say it's excuses. Ethan says everyone has their struggles and we'll find a way. The teacher was struck by the child's observation. That afternoon, she spoke to Ethan. "The kids really connect with you. You have something special." "I understand where they're coming from," Ethan explained. "I know how hard it is to focus on school when you're worried about basics like food and safety." "You went through that?" "I did. That's why I know teaching subjects alone isn't enough. First, you have to show a child they matter, that someone cares about them. And how do you do that? I remember each of their names, ask about their weekends, praise them when they do well, and am patient when they struggle. Little things that show they're important." The internship confirmed for Ethan that he'd chosen the right profession. At the end of the semester, the school principal made an offer. "Ethan, I'd like to invite you to work here after you graduate. I rarely see someone so young with such a calling for teaching." Ethan was moved by the offer. "It would be an honor," he replied. At home, he shared the news with his family. "You're not even graduated yet and already have a job lined up," Richard exclaimed proudly. "It's because he's the best teacher in the world," Emily declared confidently. "I still have a lot to learn," Ethan said modestly. "Humility is one of your best qualities," Jennifer observed. "Arrogant teachers can't truly teach." By his third year, Ethan and Sarah were inseparable. She had also excelled in her studies and planned to work in adult literacy. "Imagine if we worked together someday," Sarah mused. "You with the kids, me with the adults." "It'd be perfect," Ethan agreed. "Complete family education." "Have you ever thought about getting married?" Sarah asked suddenly. Ethan flushed. "I think about it sometimes." "With me?" Sarah pressed boldly. Ethan met her eyes. "Every day," he admitted. It was at that moment that Ethan knew he had found not only his professional calling, but also his life partner. The engagement was announced in their 4th year of college, to the delight of the entire Anderson family. "Sarah's really going to be my sister-in-law," Emily cheered. "Do you approve?" Ethan asked his sister. "Of course. She's almost as great as you," Emily replied generously. Richard and Jennifer welcomed Sarah as a daughter. "Welcome officially to the family," Richard said at the engagement dinner. "Thank you for accepting me. You raised a wonderful man," Sarah responded. "He made himself," Jennifer said. "We just gave him the environment to flourish." The graduation in education was a deeply emotional moment. Ethan graduated as the top student in his class, receiving multiple honors. "Speech! Speech!" his classmates chanted when his name was called as the outstanding graduate. Nervously, Ethan stepped onto the stage, but when he saw his family in the audience, his confidence grew. "Dear professors, colleagues, and families," he began. "Today I graduate as an educator, but in truth, my education as a teacher began long ago, in a park with a little girl who cried because she couldn't ride a bike." The audience listened intently. "I learned that teaching isn't about passing on information. It's about touching hearts, awakening dreams, and showing possibilities. It's about making every child believe they're special and capable." Richard was crying with pride. "To my fellow graduates, I hope you find the same passion for education that I've found. May you see in every child not just a student, but a hopeful future." "And to my family," Ethan looked directly at Richard, Jennifer, and Emily, "thank you for teaching me that true love has no limits. You didn't just adopt me. You taught me to embrace the world as my responsibility." The audience rose in an emotional standing ovation. After the ceremony, as the family celebrated, Emily made an observation that moved everyone. "Ethan, remember when you taught me to ride a bike?" "Of course, sweetheart. Now you're going to teach hundreds of kids how to ride through life, right?" Emily's simple comparison perfectly captured Ethan's journey. "That's exactly right, Emily. And it all started with you." On his first day as a full-fledged teacher, Ethan was nervous but excited. The school where he had interned had kept its promise and hired him. "Good morning, kids," he said to his first official class. Good morning, Mr. Ethan, the children chorused. Before we begin with lessons, I want to get to know each of you. Let's sit in a circle and everyone can tell me their name and something they love to do. The children loved the idea. As they went around, Ethan paid attention to every detail they shared. My name is Peter, and I like playing soccer, one boy said. Awesome, Peter. What position do you play? Goalie. That's so important. The goalie protects the whole team. It's a big responsibility. Peter beamed with pride. My name is Anna, and I like drawing, a shy girl said. That's wonderful, Anna. Drawing is a way to tell stories without words. You'll have to show me your artwork. And so Ethan got to know each child, making everyone feel special and seen. At the end of the first day, the principal approached him. How was your first day? Perfect, Ethan replied with a bright smile. I think I'll learn a lot from these kids. Are you sure it's not the other way around? I am. Children always teach us more than we realize. After a few months of teaching, Ethan had transformed his classroom. The walls were covered in the children's drawings and projects. There was a cozy reading nook and a kindness board where students wrote down acts of kindness they witnessed. Mr. Ethan, can I tell you something? Asked Lily, a 7-year-old student. Of course, Lily. My mom said I seemed different at home, happier. Really? And why do you think you're happier? Because here at school, I feel important. You remember everyone's name and always say nice things about us. Ethan crouched down to the little girl's level. You are important, Lily. Each one of you is special and unique. My mom wants to meet you. Is that okay? Of course, I'd be happy to talk to her. These situations happened often. The children's parents noticed positive changes at home and wanted to meet the teacher making a difference. Your son has always been smart, Ethan would tell parents during meetings. He just needed someone to believe in him. A year later, Ethan and Amanda married in a simple but love-filled ceremony. Emily was the maid of honor, and Richard walked Ethan down the aisle since he had no biological father present. I'm proud of you, son, Richard whispered as they reached the altar. Thank you for giving me a family to share this moment with, Ethan replied, moved. The celebration took place in the very park where it had all begun, decorated specially for the occasion. It was the most symbolic place to mark the start of this new chapter. It's beautiful to see how the place where Ethan once lived alone is now full of people who love him, Jennifer remarked during the party. That's the power of love, Amanda replied. It transforms everything. During their honeymoon, Ethan and Amanda visited educational projects in other cities, always thinking of ways to improve their teaching. Even on your honeymoon, you can't stop thinking about education, Richard teased when they returned. It's our passion, Amanda explained. We can't separate personal and professional life when it's something we love so much. 2 years after the wedding, Ethan and Amanda announced they were expecting a baby. I'm going to be an aunt, Emily cheered. I'm going to be a grandpa, Richard said, emotional. And I'll teach my child to ride a bike, Ethan added, remembering how it all began. Actually, Emily will teach, Amanda said, smiling. She's already volunteered to be the family's official bike instructor. Emily beamed with pride at the responsibility. During the pregnancy, Ethan continued excelling as a teacher. His class consistently had the best results in the school, not just academically but in emotional and social growth. What's your secret? A fellow teacher asked. It's no secret, Ethan replied. It's genuine love for the kids and respect for each one as a unique individual. But how do you maintain discipline without being strict? I show them that caring for each other matters more than just grades. When children feel part of a community, they naturally want to contribute positively. The colleague took notes, impressed by someone so young yet so wise. When the baby arrived, she was a girl named Hope, in honor of what Ethan represented to everyone who knew him. Hope Anderson, Richard said, holding his granddaughter for the first time. What a perfect name. She'll grow up in a family full of love, just like Emily and I did, Ethan said, gazing at his daughter with endless tenderness. Emily, now 15, was enchanted by her niece. Can I teach her to ride a bike when she's older? She asked. Of course, Ethan replied. It'll be a family tradition. With Hope's birth, Ethan became even more dedicated to early education. Watching his own daughter grow gave him valuable insights into cognitive and emotional development. "Being a father has helped me understand the kids at school even better," he told Amanda. "Every stage of growth is a world of discoveries, and our daughter is lucky to have a dad who understands children so well," Amanda replied. When Hope turned 2, something special happened. The family went to the Central Park where it had all begun, now renovated with a plaque honoring the Stories in the Park project that Ethan had created. "Look, Hope," said Ethan, pointing to the bench where he used to sleep. "That's where Daddy lived before he found our family." Hope didn't understand yet, but Emily explained with the wisdom of her 17 years. "One day, you'll understand how special it is to have a father who turned hardships into love." That same day, a situation echoed the past in a touching way. A little girl about 3 years old was crying because she couldn't skate, while her nanny tried unsuccessfully to comfort her. "Daddy, should we help?" asked Emily, remembering how it had all started years ago. Ethan smiled and approached the girl, just as he had done with Emily so many years before. "Hi, sweetheart, why are you crying?" Ethan asked gently. "I can't skate," the girl sobbed. "Would you like me to help you?" Ethan offered. The girl nodded, and Ethan patiently began teaching her, while Richard, Jennifer, Amanda, Emily, and Hope watched with emotion. "Some things never change," Richard remarked to Jennifer. "He still can't see a child in trouble without wanting to help." "That's why he's such a special teacher," Jennifer replied. "And a wonderful father," Amanda added. When the girl managed to skate a few feet on her own, her parents, who had arrived to pick her up, were amazed by the patience of the stranger who had helped their daughter. "Thank you so much," said the father. "I've been trying to teach her for weeks." "My pleasure," Ethan replied. "Sometimes we just need a different approach." "Are you a teacher?" the mother asked. "I am." "It shows. You have a very special way with children." As the family walked away, Emily commented, "It's amazing how history repeats itself. You're still changing lives, one child at a time." "It's my purpose," Ethan replied simply. At 25, Ethan was already recognized as one of the best teachers in the city. He had written articles on inclusive education and was invited to speak at other schools. "Mr. Ethan, may I ask you a question?" a teacher said after one of his talks. "Of course." "What motivates you every day to give your best in education?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "I remember how I felt when someone believed in me for the first time. When my family adopted me, they didn't just give me a home, they gave me the certainty that I had worth. I want every child who walks into my classroom to feel that too." "And how do you handle very difficult children?" "There are no difficult children. There are children with difficulties, and most behavioral issues come from unmet emotional needs." "Can you give an example?" "I have a student who was labeled troublesome because he couldn't sit still and disrupted class. I found out he wasn't eating breakfast because his mother left early for work. After I made sure he had a snack, his behavior changed completely." The audience was impressed by the sensitivity of his approach. That evening at home, Ethan shared his day with the family. "How was the talk?" Richard asked. "Good. I always get emotional when I talk about education. It's hard to explain to other teachers how rewarding it is to see a child realize they're capable." "You're spreading your teaching philosophy," Jennifer observed, "multiplying the impact you can have." "That's what I hope. If I can inspire other teachers to see children as unique individuals, I'll be helping far more kids than I ever could alone." Emily, now an 18-year-old about to start college, had decided to follow in her brother's footsteps. "Ethan, you inspire me every day," she said during dinner. "I want to be a teacher too." "What field do you want to pursue?" asked Ethan. "Special education. I want to work with children who face more challenges, just like you do." Ethan was moved by his sister's choice. "You'll be an amazing teacher. You have the right heart for it." "I learned from the best," Emily replied. When Emily graduated high school as the class valedictorian, her speech was a tribute to her brother. "My brother taught me that kindness is the most important quality anyone can have," she told the audience. "He showed me that when we help someone, we're not just changing that person's life. We're changing the world one kind act at a time." Ethan sat in the audience with tears in his eyes, proud of the remarkable young woman Emily had become. She's turned into a natural leader, Sarah remarked. She always was. She just needed to grow into it, Ethan replied. That same year, Hope turned 5 and had her first official bike lesson with Aunt Emily in the same Central Park where it all began. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Hope asked when she saw the tears in Ethan's eyes. "These are happy tears, sweetheart. I'm watching history repeat itself in the most beautiful way." "What history?" "The story of how our family came together. It all started here, with a little girl learning to ride a bike." Hope didn't fully understand, but she sensed it was a special moment. By 30, Ethan had become the principal of the school where he taught. His educational philosophy had completely transformed the institution. "Principal Ethan, our school now has the highest passing rates and lowest dropout numbers in the city," the academic coordinator reported. "More important than that, our kids are happy. They love coming to school," Ethan replied. "How do you measure that?" "By the smiles in the hallways, the excitement in the classrooms, the hugs I get every morning. Education without joy isn't complete education." Under Ethan's leadership, the school implemented several innovative programs: kindness classes, community service projects, and a peer tutoring system inspired by his own experience. "Mr. Ethan saved my self-esteem," wrote a former student in a letter years later. "When I was in 3rd grade, I felt stupid because I couldn't keep up in math. He taught me differently, and I realized I wasn't dumb. I just learned differently. Now I'm an engineer." Letters like this arrived regularly, confirming the lasting impact of Ethan's work. One afternoon, Richard, now 60, visited Ethan at school. "How's my favorite son?" Richard teased. "Hey, what about me?" protested Emily, who was also visiting. "You're both my favorite," Richard laughed. During the visit, Richard watched Ethan interact with the children and remembered the 10-year-old boy he'd met in the park. "Do you remember what you told me that first day?" Richard asked. "What?" "That seeing Emily happy was payment enough. You're still the same, making others' happiness your greatest reward." "I learned that from you," Ethan replied. "You showed me that true wealth lies in the relationships we build. And you've multiplied that lesson for hundreds of children." Just then, a little boy approached them. "Principal Ethan, can I tell you something?" asked the 7-year-old. "Of course, Michael." "Yesterday, I helped a classmate with his homework, and it made me feel really good." "Is it always like that when you help someone?" Ethan crouched down to meet the boy's height. "Always, Michael. When we help someone, our own hearts grow happier too." "Then I'm going to help more people," the boy decided. Richard watched the scene with deep emotion. "You're raising a generation of kind children," I said to Ethan when Michael walked away. "It's the greatest legacy I could leave." On the 20th anniversary of the meeting in the park, the family organized a special celebration in the same spot, now completely revitalized. 20 years, said Jennifer, looking around. "Who would have thought such a simple moment could change so many lives?" "It wasn't simple," Emily corrected. "It was magical." "It was necessary," said Ethan. "Each of us needed the other. We just didn't know it yet." Hope, now 12, listened to the conversation. "Daddy, tell the story again, how you all met," she asked. Ethan smiled and began the tale the family loved to hear. "Once upon a time, there was a little girl who cried because she couldn't ride a bike. And a boy who lived in a park, but had a heart as big as the sky," Emily continued. "And a father who learned family isn't about blood, but about love," Richard added. "And a mother who discovered the best gifts sometimes come in unexpected packages," Jennifer finished. "And they all lived happily ever after?" Hope asked, as she always did. "We're living happily ever after right now," Sarah replied, hugging her daughter. The end of the story. What an incredible story, don't you think? Tell us what you thought in the comments. Do you believe small acts of kindness can truly transform entire lives? Did Ethan's story inspire you? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to like and subscribe.